a minute into it. Do you mind if we get started? I don't want to cut into the time that we have for conversation. We have 45 minutes, as I understand in my schedule here. Christina, do you want to get started? Is that okay? And would you mind introducing yourself? The reason I like that, and Francesca, is that way you get to say what you want about yourself, as opposed to have some guy who's in the laundry trying to make stuff up about you. And some of the things, Christina, I should probably say, I probably shouldn't say. No, that's not true. I know nothing about you, but it's not above board.
Okay, we're setting the bars here.
So, Christina, let me ask you to get started, if that's all right. And welcome from Sweden.
Yes, thank you. So, for those who haven't met me before, I'm Christina Johansson, an associate professor in education and adult learning and work integrated learning, and I have been in the WAIS community for about 12 or 13 years now, doing some modules, being in the board, and attending the conferences. And I had the last years, not 2020, but before that, I had a regional responsibility for Europe through the ISO WAIS office in Sweden. So that's my background. Francesca, how about you?
Christina. Thank you. Hello from the UK to wherever you are in the world. I'm Fran, Francesca Walker-Martin. I am a reader in work-based learning, so that's baby professor to everybody that doesn't know the UK stuff. A reader in work-based learning at the University of Central Lancashire, but I'm here in my role today as the chair of ASSET, which is the Work-Based and Placement Learning Association, which is based in the whole of the UK. Next slide, please, Omar. Thank you. This is great. Okay, so we thought we'd bring to you a number of things that have been going on during this interesting time that we're in. So we thought we'd look and share some key policy and developments and regional initiatives from both the UK and Sweden. So in terms of the UK, one thing that we have found has been absolutely essential during this really challenging time is flexibility. Flexibility in terms of when work integrated learning takes place, whether we stick to the number of weeks that we've always stuck to, or whether we change that. So we've flexed around that. We've changed assessments. So I'm here talking about all of the universities that we represent across the United Kingdom. Now we are overseen in the UK by the Quality Assurance Agency, the QAA, who were very keen to link with ASSET to ensure that the guidance that they were giving to work integrated learning opportunities was of quality, but they look to us to work with them, and we have developed policies and procedures during these challenging times. So that's it from the UK. Over to you, Christina.
And I will talk mostly about Sweden, but a bit from your European perspective as well. So in Sweden, cooperation has been, the word of cooperation has been really stressed out in our policy documents from the Swedish governance. So they are actually saying, you all universities, old, young, elitistic or regional, you should all work with cooperation. In the last document they sent out, it was mentioned 450 times, actually more times than education, the word education. And this is very interesting, because they are actually pointing with a whole hand to say, work with cooperation, work with the surrounding society. This is a major issue in Sweden right now, because it will be and have impact on the money we get from the state finances we get for the university, that will say education and research. So it's interesting. We have also moved into this political bit infected discussion about lifelong learning. We all know that in Europe they stress lifelong learning in European EU documents since in the mid-80s. But there is a lot of critique around the word of lifelong learning because it put all the pressure on the individual. You say to the people that it's your responsibility to do your own journey. And if you fail, it's your problem, so to speak. So there is a very debate right now in Sweden and in some places in Europe about the lifelong learning concept. So my colleagues in Jönköping, they have started to think about it as a life with strategy instead, almost to exclude the formal learning system, educational system, to say that learning occurs in more places than in academia. It happens every day, in everyday life, so to speak. And that is it also, of course, as you all sitting in this room know, it's in more congruence with work integrated learning. So lifelong learning may be transferred to or be enhanced or incorporated in a new terminology that's called life with learning or life with strategy for learning. So this is a good question from Janushi. We will take that later, but we take it with us. That is a good discussion question, I think. When it comes to Europe, the apprenticeship is rapidly taking grounds. We know that 4 or 5 years ago, France admitted they had a previous organization called Formasoup. And after a while, I think they had 20 years working with internship in whole France, they said, okay, now it's up to every university to arrange for their own apprenticeship, and they will get money for each place, etc. So the apprenticeship is growing very fastly in the UK, France, Norway, not in Sweden yet, interestingly enough. We don't talk about apprenticeship in that kind of sense, but it could be good to know. So Omar, please switch the slide.
Thank you, Omar. Okay, so in terms of good practice and responding to the pandemic, so universities across the UK were very focused on collaboration. So that's locally, nationally, and internationally. So it's been over a year now since we've been put into our little boxes. And little boxes can be really quite challenging in terms of support and working together. So at Asset, we reached out to our community. We have over 2,000 members. And we really looked at local and national and international initiatives. And we were very grateful to our waste community, our broader waste community, for bringing together a number of voices. And I think that has strengthened the work integrated learning community, not just within a European context, but within a global context. And that we've seen as really good practice because we have been able to share resources right across the world. One of the key issues that came to us, and we know are issues not just for Europe, but right across the world, is so we as higher education providers can broadcast. So we were sent off home to our boxes to broadcast. Sweden didn't, but I have been locked in here for over a year now. It's a very nice place to be, but there was the recognition that not all students could access the information that we were broadcasting, and my university, amongst others, recognized that very quickly and made sure that the students had access to technology to be able to receive broadcasts. I mean, from a good practice point of view, that was amazing. Yes, I accept the fact that that's a significant financial outlay. Other good practice that we've seen during the pandemic to support work integrated learning is what we saw was a significant drop in the number of opportunities, simply because businesses weren't able to offer them anymore. But what they were able to do was help to prepare the students for coming back again. So whether it was through projects, making sure they kept up to date with emerging needs, emerging technologies. I mean, if we think about the pandemic itself, it's been and continues to be horrendous, but it has moved us forwards significantly by a number of years in terms of the learning, in terms of what we can do and what we can't do, and how flexible we can be. So we've had those conversations right across the community. And what we've seen was a rise in short live projects, various ones. But we, as university and higher education providers, are part of our community, whether it's in a city centre, whether it's on the edge of the city or town, or wherever we live, we're part of that community. And what we saw was a rise in a number of live projects that our students could get involved in. And we also saw a rise in the speed of being able to respond. So, for example, make printing, 3D printing specialist masks, our fashion students making scrubs for our healthcare workers. So we've seen so many different things that have been rising up and developing as opportunities, which is really quite exciting. Sad situation, but we've been rising to the challenge. Christina.
Thank you. We have a lot of discussions in Sweden right now about the new normal. Are we going back to the normal? We have to remember that Sweden has not been in lockdown, not for a day. Everything has been open. You can go to the grocery stores. We have been limitations, not so many people here and there, etc. There have been a lot of recommendations, but not a lockdown. And of course, this has major impact in how you perceive the change in society and the pandemic situation. In my own research, together with UK and 8 other countries in Europe, we found that the student satisfaction in Sweden was enormously high. I would actually think that the students in a pandemic situation will feel a bit aligned, not so incensed with in connection with the university, have the information, etc. But they are actually equally satisfied as when they were in campus. So at the same time, we have all this investigation going on the health of the youth and teenagers, and that is dramatic. They are feeling so mentally ill, actually. So it's the conversations and the phone calls into the kind of crisis emergency numbers has increased 400% in a year. So it's, of course, we are not in balance. That's not what I'm saying. But the students at the Swedish university are feeling quite good, despite the circumstances. However, Sweden is also top 2 ranked in the world when it comes to internet connections. So I would say the 98 to 99% of the students have fully internet capacity, and they can sit, or we can sit almost in the far end of the woods and have 100% coverage on broadcasting. So we have an excellent starting point. And I think that is one of the major issues, that the students actually don't feel, they still feel a sense of belonging with the university. So when this pandemic struck us, we have just started to open what we call an open lab. And that is, we work a lot with immersive media. We have a couple of professors that are really, really advanced in this level. So we are trying to push the limits on the state of the art of the research of immersive media. So we have this kind of very huge, almost like a hall with the newest technology, where the students from our programs and also our colleagues are coming to develop themselves in immersive media, how to use VR or augmented reality to enhance the learning situation. So I'm quite a bit proud of that, actually. It's functioning really well, and it's fun to see that it's progressing. Of course, this situation has actually made it move faster, I think, than if it hasn't been that. So there could be some kind of learning to take with in this crisis time as well, that unexpected things are happening. So, Omar, you can change the slide.
Okay, we wanted to share some research with you, and from a UK perspective, I've picked on 3 that I thought you might find really interesting. The top one is Friedman and Lauritsen, the class ceiling. It's a very quiet thing, but very obvious from a UK perspective that there is very much a class system when we think about access to work integrated learning, and I thought that would be something that you might want to have a little look at. It doesn't just cover the UK, it covers it does have a global perspective, so have a look at that. Another one that I thought would be really interesting was from Finn, about understanding student mobilities in higher education and how they actually move around, and those drivers for them. But one that really I thought I'd like to drive at you is this one, especially in times when getting access to work integrated learning is challenging in some areas, not so much in others. I mean, we're going to see probably some significant changes in work and the way people work and the way our learners and students access work. But the thing is that work integrated learning, when we look at it from an educational perspective, so that applied element of learning, this piece of research that was done back in 2018 was quite pivotal and important to us now. So we were talking about here about, does work integrated learning in the UK, we talk about placements and work-based learning. So what does it do when you consider academic output? And what we discovered was that in this particular study, you would see a significant increase in the degree classification that could be achieved by the students. So if I give you an example, so somebody from maybe, I can go into the class bit here. So from a lower class, who would be expected perhaps to maybe get, I don't know, a third class degree, at best a 2-2. If they do work integrated learning, if they do a placement, what you will see is they will come out with a first class honours. That is a significant increase. It's in comparison to their peers. The other thing is about BAME. Students from other ethnicities, and what we saw was a significant increase above their white peers in terms of attainment. So if they did a placement, if they did work integrated learning, they would get a better class degree than their white peers. And honestly, when we saw the results, our jaws literally dropped. And that has given us a really big push to say, right, come on, how can we change the accessing for the BAME community? So just wanted to share those with you because we thought they were interesting, and you know, we want to wave that Will flag, don't we? Christina.
Thank you. I will share with you a reference to my house garden. We're actually using that reference in our WIL modules as well, global WIL modules that Nora presented in the introduction speak. It's a very good article, and it's actually more modern than you can think, because it was almost 10 years ago. Ronald Barnett at UK Open University wrote about learning for the unknown, and it's a kind of funny that it's 10 years later we can still draw on his thinking. What is our mission as educators, and how can we what approach do we have to this this kind of learning, innovative, entrepreneurial flexibility in students, and not adaptively or employable, being employable. That word is not in the same box as Barnes thinking. So I've already talked a bit about the experience of COVID-19 in Sweden. They are very special. We are the black sheep, in the international press. Our people or elderly are not in a good place, etc. So we have been the experimenter in this process. Even though I talked about that, the students are feeling quite well. The middle-aged people like me are feeling quite well. So there are some different kind of experiences. We have at the University West a new KK Foundation, big, huge project. There's a lot of millions rolling in for 10 years, $1 million. Doing research on how we can come to development, how we can be innovative, how we can be technology driven, etc. And the thing is that we have what we call industrial work integrated learning, and there is where my and our colleagues' research come in. How can we provide learning in a work-life context? How can we provide lifelong or life with learning, etc. It's quite interesting. For those that want more information, just put an email to me and I will send you a lot of information. We have a new PhD program in WIL. Since 2012, we started the first PhD program. I think a lot of you remember that. It was a big deal. But we had two different directions. We had one with education and one in informatics. Now we have a PhD program in WIL. And that is a major difference because we have students from all over, different contexts, nationalities coming into the program. And it's growing. Right now we have about 40 plus PhD students, and me and some of my colleagues saying, stop, we cannot do more right now. So we are growing too fast because we're a small university. But of course, it's a fun problem. We have in June, we will have a grand opening of what we're calling the Activity Theory Center at University West. It's Yrja, Anna-Lisa, and me that's creating that, together with 5 other prominent professors in the field, trying to find a new node. A couple of years ago, we had Cradle at Helsingfors University having this role, but Yrja and Anna-Lisa have left Helsingfors and come to University West as guest professors. So now we will actually have this Activity Theory Center in place in June. So I hope that I can reach you through the ways. Maybe I can do a blink to Jim, Nora, and Judy that listening and say maybe we can have it in a newsletter so we can invite you, because it's actually a big deal, I think. And it's a fun deal. And we also, as Nora said in the introduction, we have created a new memory of understanding with WAYS from University West. So the Vice Chancellor Martin is talking with the board, trying to find out the kind of road to take forward. Fun. Omar and then Francesca.
We wanted to share some resources or ideas that have been useful to us. So on the left over here, you've got something called CJAM. You can Google it, and if you Google it, it will be UCLan CJAM. So what is it? It's an innovative way, originally designed at our university, University of Central Lancashire, by the creative industries, who often have significant challenges of getting access to WIL, just for a number of reasons. So what they did was this. So we had a jam, a fun event, a bit like a mini type of festival. So what happens? We get employers who have a range of offers. So what they might have on offer is maybe some mentoring into the role that you're looking to go into as a student in the future. Might be some work shadowing, might be a live project, or it might be something much more established, much longer, months, like many months or a year, up to a year. So it's a whole range of things that employers have on offer for students. And what they do is this: they all come together within a subject area, and the employers pitch. And there's rules of 8. So it's 8 minutes to pitch what you've got. This is my company. This is what I've got to offer you. So the students then all take note of that and then choose who they would like to pitch to. So you could have up to 20 employers in a room at once and up to 200 students. So when we do it in person, this is loud and it's like full of energy. And then the students will go and pitch to the employer, and they've only got 8 minutes to do that. So there's pitch from the employer, pitch from the student, and then the employers sit down on the day and make offers to those students. So it's really, if we think about it from that endorphins, it's instant likes, instant stuff happening. And the students can sometimes get multiple offers from that. But what we found is it's a way of engaging employers in our university community. It's a way of quickly getting access to opportunities. It's fun, it's vibrant, and it really tests the students. So you have to do a really good job of pitching. And once you've done a pitch, you can do that pitch again and again and again. So the question is, did it transfer well online? Yes, it did. And we're still able to deliver that. It's a great way, and I just wanted to share that with you. Christina.
And I think this is actually, if I don't remember wrong, the last slide. So soon we will let all our guests come in and ask a lot of interesting questions on what's going on. And I talked a bit about this before with the Open Lab, and I will actually elaborate a bit on that, because it is, from the beginning, we started it as a research lab. And it was for our, we have a special department for ICT pedagogues. So it was for them to develop together with our researchers to enhance or even progress in the research line for immersive media. But quite soon we recognized that, but we need to invite our colleagues, the one on the teacher program, the nurses program, they need to be good on these ICT things, because they are actually training tomorrow's worker in these kind of areas. So we have invited and trying to make our colleagues good at this new technology and the solutions that comes with this augmented reality. There has been some kind of resistance, of course, and we are not there yet, but we are working on them. So this department, it's Erik Malmsköld. He's one of my closest colleagues that working with this. And he's doing a lot of workshops on this, trying to develop this. And in the last years, also the students has been invited to be a part of this kind of projects. They have done this 3D printing things for the healthcare system, extra for free, driving them out to the hospitals, the elderly care, etc., and having this kind of what you call live projects that are actually what's needed right now from surrounding society. So it's been very successful in that perspective. We have different other kinds of stuff going on as well. But what we also noticed is that when this kind of rapid changes are happening, we need to think about what is actually a practicum, what is actually a working place or space, and how do you collect your data? Can you actually go out and collect data during the pandemic? I would say, of course not, but how do you collect your data then so you can have this kind of work integrated learning profile? So the practicum has moved ahead, so to speak, but there are things happening online in a very good mood, etc. But also that we are thinking that, do they need to be in work life? Or can we find a reference organization that builds on the organizational maps from a real organization, so to speak? So we just copy a whole organization into a web platform where the students are picking their data. And that we are calling the Mentor 2.0 at the Human Research Program, for instance. So there are kind of movements going on. I'm just a bit afraid that some of this will stay because it's easier to manage as a teacher. Because maybe then when they have a student that doesn't function so well outside the university, they get all the calls. But if they have everything in their computer, they have control over the situation. And I think that our students should go out. So that is my. But as we talked about before, sometimes we don't have the options to do that. And then you need to find a solution to that. So It's 16:45. We almost held the time we were thinking, Francesca, almost. But Omar, I think you can take that exactly. He's reading my mind.
Well, let me thank you both for this presentation, and it was delightfully integrated. I've been to a number of Will conversations, and maybe it happened elsewhere, but this is the first I've seen it, and I thought it was very well done. And on behalf of your audience, thank you for being so well organized. There are probably many questions. I was just going to ask the first one about the UC LAN CJAM. And if you could talk a little bit, maybe you've mentioned this already, about how it's working virtually, if it is, because it seems like from the stuff I've found on the web already, there are wonderful, enthusiastic, packed auditoriums of real people engaging with each other and getting that energy. But are you doing it online in the pandemic? And
yes, we are.
Does it have the same energy?
Yeah, Jim, we are keeping it online. Of course, the rate of energy will never be the same as actually being in the room. But one of the things is that because we are so accessible, which is something that Christina mentioned, that you can get a much bigger and broader range of people in the room because they're not somewhere else, and they can quickly flick from one thing to another. I mean, I'm with you here, and I was somewhere else a moment ago, and we're all doing that at the moment. We're all being able to be incredibly flexible. So yes, it works. In terms of the energy, I would argue that you can't ever really get that major buzz that you get from being with lots of people, but it works and the opportunities are still there. I mean, certainly I talked about the university being a part of the community. And one of the things is that we've reached out to our community, right, and said, what do you need as a small business, maybe? What skills do you need? And being able to provide those. So yes, CJAM continues loud and proud.
Yeah. So there's a question in the chat that I'll just throw out since it's relevant from Janet, which is, which platform did you use to move the CJAM thing online?
We use Microsoft Teams.
Okay, good. Yep, a very famous platform. A lot of these companies are really developing their products. I'm a Zoom addict myself for my teaching, and it's gotten better. Other questions from the audience? We've got the chat open.
One question.
Please.
Yeah, hello. Hello, Christina and Francis.
And it's good to see you.
For presentation. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Jim, yes. And I think, if I'm right, Judy and Nora, in the other presentation, were talking about the reduction of the number of placements or COP will in their countries ranging between 20 to 30, 40%.
Yeah.
Because COVID. While in
Yeah.
Japan, it's totally devastated. we stopped everything. In my university, for instance, we stopped all the internship things, whatever long and short. I was wondering what was happening in your countries, UK and in Sweden. Do you have any data, more or less, rough figure about how much was it reduced during this COVID period?
Well, of course, we would have, it depends what area. So if we think about hospitality, if we think about travel, that was instantly devastated. But we also, at the same time, saw a significant rise in other areas. So some areas have seen, so if you think about things like companies such as who manage things like logistics, they saw their biggest increase ever. So we've seen rises in opportunities in places like logistics, places like healthcare, places like marketing, finance. Those were all rises, but other areas were completely devastated. So in terms of a percentage, a very similar percentage to what we've seen.
How about Sweden?
In Sweden, it's more or less the same as in UK. But what's interesting with Sweden is that we have almost only, except for 1 or 2 universities, they are state financed. It means that we have more students than ever. We have more research than ever. So when it comes to university sector and the higher education sector, it's actually profited on this kind of situation. So maybe it marginalized in a few areas that they have very much international students, that would say with the IT sector and some of the technological departments. But otherwise, in the major sector, so to speak, we have more to do than ever, actually. It's a strange situation, and as you said, Francesca, some parts of the society, they profit on this, but most parts actually don't profit on it. So we have a high degree of unemployment, etc. And we, as I told you before, we have this huge problem with our youth and teenagers.
Yeah.
Same question, if I may, could ask Jim about the United States. I've been watching CNN every day last year, and I hear lots of terrible news. What's happening to oil in America? Has it been reduced, or stay as it is like in Sweden or UK?
It's been reduced, and as you know, there's a heterogeneity within the United States regions about how much of a lockdown, which I think is the primary driver of the reduction in placement rates. Also, like everybody else, there's the transition to online and the idea that will doesn't have to be a placement, that it could be a project. And those things, I think, are actually expanding under the force of innovation due to the pandemic. So it's really heterogeneous. I've been in close contact with Drexel, which, as you know, is a major co-op institution, and they've experienced similar downturns and been quite flexible in their response. In fact, their vice president, Ian Sladen, says that they were sort of shocked into this by the way the pandemic had just devastated. But that shock turned to an advantage, a silver lining, as we've discussed a couple of times in this conference, of innovation. So we'll see where this leaves us, because we're hoping to return to near normal activity in the fall. And right now there's a big conversation about whether we can mandate the students that come back to have vaccines and therefore have a fairly normal fall. And that will allow us as a waste to see what's left behind in the first blush of the return to normalcy in this country. But I think we could have a laboratory in how the various states themselves are reacting. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions from the audience? We've got another 7 minutes.
Jim, Colin Caniff here from University of Limerick in Ireland.
Yes.
I might give the UL perspective on that last question as well, because I found it incredibly interesting, both the question and during the conference, to see the percentage in trying to maintain a placement program during 2020. At the University of Limerick, we had approximately 2,000 students on placement, and in the heel of the hunt, at the time the pandemic hit, we had a 95% placement rate. But overall, looking back on 2020, we maintained an 82% placement rate across the 2,000 placements for a region that is really teeny tiny. And then looking at the where they're working, about 50% of those that were working remotely. So it remains to be seen how that pans out into the future. But I just think it's very interesting how such a small place on the fringes of Europe can have exactly the same sort of pie chart as quite big sample sizes.
That's great. Really interesting. And I think there'll be many research papers written on the different countries. Christina, there's a question from Nora for you in the chat. Would you like me to read it to you?
I've read it. I can answer.
Great. Just making sure. Why don't you try to answer it if it's okay?
I will try. You asked I think the future is with this immersive media and working toward learning. And I think that is actually the future. Because right now we're putting a lot of students, I know that is the case in many different countries. We are putting a lot of students into different kind of placements. in our small region, we have problems finding places for our nurse students and our teacher students because we have so many students at so much facilities, places for them. So I think that you can take out certain momentums or sessions or parts of the curricula, and you can actually use them in this kind of immersive media that you can practice, you can train, you can see. I don't know how much you have seen in this kind, when you put these classes on you can see how the blood is pouring through the veins. It's very realistic. It's like wow, I'm inside a human body. I actually had one of the most, what I think is prominent professors his name is Ferenc Marton, and he was the creator behind the method of phenomenography. So he's in the science of philosophy, and I put his glasses on his eyes. He was 80 years then, and he put them in, and he was like, what am I seeing? And he was actually in the with the planets in the in the space, moving around between the planets. So I think that you can use this kind of immersive media not as a replacement, but as a complement to instead try to shift the focus of the placement. The placement is where they're actually going to work together with their colleagues, reflect on the theory when they are in practice, and vice versa. But a lot of the moments, the things they are doing right now in the placement, they can do it in school. They don't need to be in a placement to do it. I'm not only talking from the Swedish perspective. I think you can cut down the weeks, and you can actually do the weeks more, what do you call it, adaptable to the work situation, and not moving school into the practice. The practice is about the practical things and thinking, of course, of theories and not reducing it. But a lot of things that you're doing right now, you can do in immersive media.
Jim, you're silent. Jim, you're silent.
I've been trying to turn off my microphone, and then of course I forget to turn it back on again. We've got 2 minutes now to go before the end of the session, and Nora, Lawrence, and I have to be somewhere else, or at least Nora and I do, to do the closing session. So I think that I'm going to depart now and leave you to answer the remaining questions. There are some, but I want to take this moment to thank both of you, not only for a well-organized presentation, but a deeply intellectual one. I wish that we had another hour that we could spend here. So thank you very, very much. And that this thing can continue as we get ready for the final session. So thank you. And here's Nora. You want to say something, Nora?
Thanks, that was great. Thanks, Francesca and Christina. Lovely as always. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Marie. And Christine. It's a lot of people known people here. And Carmen. So Maritz, yeah, he left. Never mind. So, thank you. That went well, right?
That's okay. I think if anybody's still in the room.
Yeah, 10 in the room.
Yeah, there's 10 in the room, so there's 9. They're leaving.
I mean, that was great. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Okay.
I hope you find day today as well. I'm great. Perfect. So maybe we could leave this room as well, Francesca, and go to the next session.
Christina, I'll catch up with you later. I've got to go to my next thing, but lovely to see you again.
The same. See you soon. Hear to you soon. Bye-bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
Bye.